Does the conscience exist? The conscience is assumed to be the ability for individuals to judge right from wrong, and it's typically assumed that evildoers will have one too, and that they would choose to not listen to their conscience. Often, the conscience is illustrated as having angels and devils tempting you into doing right or wrong. Perhaps this concept comes from the book of Genesis, where Adam and Eve supposedly ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, gained a conscience, passed it down to future generations, and hence why everyone would seem to have one. But there seems to be an alternative explanation that makes more logical sense than to assume everyone is given a conscience and can explain many other social phenomena in life as well. Specifically, instead of viewing the conscience as one's ability to judge right from wrong, view the conscience as one's ability to anticipate people's reactions, emotions, etc. For example, while deciding whether or not to do an evil deed, instead of having some sort of spirit whisper into your ear to tell you it's wrong, you have the ability to anticipate people getting angry at you, so therefore you can anticipate causing yourself trouble. From your anticipation of trouble and consequences, your mind raises red flags that can cause anxiety, stress, a rush of adrenaline, etc. And the resulting sense of dread and fear gives you a feeling that you're about to do something wrong because you can anticipate putting yourself in danger and trouble, therefore why it seems people can tell right from wrong as a result. But please note this is a misconception, because when you feel bad prior to giving a speech or performing before a crowd, for example, the same feeling would be called stage fright, nervousness, etc. and be considered to be normal. Meaning when you feel bad prior to doing something good or normal, it's called nervousness, etc. While applied to doing something bad, this is mistaken as your conscience, as your ability to judge wrong from right. And many animals seem to also have the ability to anticipate reactions so that they can anticipate doing things that can trigger attacks from bigger, stronger members in their group, therefore establishing hierarchies and pecking order as a result. Meaning, as explained in other videos, should souls learn life skills as animals first and then reincarnate as human beings, then this will explain where this ability comes from. Meaning it would have been something you practiced and evolved during lives as animals prior to reincarnating as human beings. It also explains why some people will seem to lack the skill, such as due to the speed of reincarnation, where there are many more human births compared to human deaths in the modern world, therefore drawing in souls of varying quality into the human population. This means the conscience is an emotional reaction to anticipate and avoid problems for yourself relative to other people, and this view can also explain many other social phenomena in life. For example, if a parent makes an expensive purchase witnessed by a child, that parent might ask the child to not tell the other parent, such as to avoid upsetting the other parent, contrasted to this being a matter of distinguishing good from evil. Or white people feel telling white lies can be good, such as when you can foresee a negative reaction from a loved one, therefore you lie to avoid that reaction. Then lying is not a good deed, and hiding problems seem to be inherently deceptive and delusional. Or white Christmas can be viewed as good when you buy material gifts for your loved ones, such as to see them smile, where businesses seem to benefit the most from this social ritual mandatory spending, where material gifts can bribe people to smile, and this is interpreted as goodness as a result. Where white people will clown around, make a fool out of themselves, and get people to laugh and smile, which then seems to be interpreted as rewarding and good to the clown. And the ability to anticipate unpleasant emotions and experiences is also why people will avoid confrontations, procrastinate tasks they don't like, pass difficult tasks on to other people, etc., because people have the ability to forecast bad experiences prior to them happening. Because the word conscience exists in pop culture, when people encounter this term, they apply it to their personal experiences in order to understand it, therefore mistaking the ability to predict people's reaction as the ability to distinguish right from wrong. And as suggested earlier, the concept of the conscience might have came from the Adam and Eve story, such as where the story existed first, hence people looked for evidence it occurred, found something resembling it, which later became the concept of the conscience. As such, the concept of the conscience emotionally equates smile and laughter to goodness and anger and hatred to evil, which is often true that goodness can lead to happiness and evilness lead to anger and hate, but not always. Hence why goodness to many people will mean controlling your temper, speaking softly, putting on a smile even if you don't feel like smiling, faking a smile, etc. Meaning the conscience is the product of poorly formed association between unrelated concepts, such as mistaking a correlation with a relationship, therefore mistaking your conscience as an inner voice that tells you what is good or evil, which is not true. For example, a prankster might laugh and smile while hurting people for their own amusement, which is not good. Or how Christmas can lead to the exchanging of gifts people don't want for the sake of observing social rituals, which leads to more trash and impact on the environment as a result, which isn't logically good, simply because of social customs and expectations. As explained in other videos, emotional goodness is not the same as logical goodness. Like giving cash to the homeless might seem like it's good because of the smile and appreciation you might receive in reaction. While in actuality, the homeless might eat from the trash, which means they won't spend the cash on essentials like food because they don't need to. They might spend the cash on entertainment instead, like drugs, including cigarettes and alcohol. Feeding and petting wild animals is another example, which might make you smile, but might tame animals so they depend on humankind to support them and then produce offspring who are also dependent on human handouts as well. Or as an advanced example, people might be happy pursuing freedoms and selfish interests because of capitalism, but at the cost of producing excessive pollution, trashing the planet, causing climate change, etc., which is not logically good. As such, people cannot intrinsically tell right from wrong. Instead, the conscience is one's ability to be affirmative, agreeable, and pleasing, such as in order to conform and fit into a crowd, similar to how animals have the ability to herd together and get along. Perhaps explaining why people can feel it's good to steal from the rich to feed the poor, because seeing people suffer can nag at your conscience, which means you might sympathize and pity the poor, but taking resources from the rich to give to the poor isn't a good solution either. And this video is not advocating ignoring the pain and suffering of people. Instead, please consider analyzing why people are suffering to see if you can show them a way out, such as by teaching and guiding them, contrasted to giving them things. Otherwise, giving things to people tend to cause dependency, such as so they don't learn how to do these things on their own and will keep relying on other people to do those things for them. Like, for example, some people can become homeless because of drug addiction, so therefore giving them free food and money isn't going to solve their addiction problem, meaning the root problem is being ignored and won't go away on its own. And those who care about people are at least emotionally good, with good intentions, such as expressed through their actions and deeds, including for strangers. This is contrasted to those who do actions they know will likely upset people, will likely get themselves in trouble, and possibly get themselves killed too, but they do it anyway, meaning there are those who do intentionally ignore their sense of foreboding and choose to do selfish, bad, and/or evil deeds. Please also note people might pressure and hurt each other towards selfishness, evilness, bad habits, etc., like how people might pick on you and say you are uncool or no fun if you do not partake in sex and drugs, for example. And it might feel easier to go with the flow instead of opposing a crowd, especially when you can't anticipate what can happen when you oppose a group, therefore driving you and motivating you toward conformity and compliance, and it takes conviction and courage to go against the flow. Otherwise, issues like global warming wouldn't be so complicated. If the conscience tells us the right thing to do, then solutions should come easily. Instead, you need to think analytically from every angle you can think of to reach the right conclusion, and use logic and evidence to convince people, and even then they might still ridicule you, attack you, etc. if the right thing opposes their interests and desires. As such, life requires people to work on their behavior, fix their personal flaws, and improve themselves, as opposed to simply listening to and obeying their conscience. In actuality, your conscience only tells you how people will likely respond to your actions, such as because you're familiar with individuals to be able to anticipate their behavior, or you have a general sense of how people will likely respond. Meaning, biologically speaking, your conscience is a product of your brain making neural connections based on your past experiences for you to guess and forecast consequences in the future. As such, no one is born with a sense of right and wrong, and smiles and happiness are emotions that might be often associated with goodness but do not constitute goodness. Like, for example, consider if buying cigarettes as a gift for a smoker is a good or bad thing. Hopefully, this video raises a new level of awareness within viewers, such as to not expect answers to come automatically from within, as if from the whispers of spirits and ghosts. Instead, judging right from wrong requires knowledge, intelligence, and thought. And a good future is produced by people who can make logical sense out of goodness and dare to convince others to do the right thing, to therefore create a good future by intention and design. Thanks for watching.